Welcome to another episode of the Little Radio Show. My name is Sandra Fernandez, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Juan Alanis and Anjelica Cazares, and we're bringing you small talk about big topics. This week we have a conversation about the assumption that all Hispanics speak Spanish and the questions we keep getting about what language we use in the show. By the way, it's in English. And while Juan is away, Anjelica and I talk about her crafting projects and what you can find on craftythrifter.com. Just a reminder, you can catch us every week on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central Time on hmsnetradio.org. Our show archives and the link to our iTunes and Stitcher channels are available at thelittlерadioshow.com. If you've had an offline conversation with me at any point in the last couple of weeks, one of the very first things I mentioned is this wonderful new project that I'm doing with my friends Juan and Anjelica.
The Little Radio Show.
It's called The Little Radio Show. And so I'm telling people about it, and I've found that continuously one of the very first questions that I get about people is the show in English? And the first couple of times that I got it took me aback a little because I'm like, well, what other language would it be in? And so now I've gotten the question enough times that I wanted to bring it up as a topic. Why do I keep getting the question as to whether or not the show is in English? Because the assumption is, I'm guessing what they're really wanting to ask is the show in Spanish?
Mm-hmm. I think this is just a lot because it has to do with our last names. Is the show in Spanish? I believe they ask because we are very Hispanic people, which our last names obviously says a lot, from Cazares, Fernandez, and Alanis.
But just because you're Hispanic doesn't necessarily mean, one, that you're bilingual. Although we've talked about the importance of being bilingual lots in the show already. And two, that you speak Spanish well enough to run a 30-minute show in that language.
And I would say even beyond the name, I think it has to do with the fact that you're Hispanic and you look Hispanic and we look Hispanic, and so it's like, it's a show in Spanish.
Do we have to keep explaining to people that we are Hispanic? I think that's obvious. That's very evident. Sometimes here, well, I don't mean to. Yeah. I don't mean to. I say words in Spanish, and I really don't mean to because a lot of people aren't going to understand that. But we do get that a lot. We get a lot of, is your show in Spanish or is it in English? Do you gear towards Hispanic people? Well, that's not always the case. And please, Sandra, let us in.
Okay, well, I'm going to argue half of what you just said.
Okay.
One, the show is not in Spanish. All three of us happen to be bilingual. Could we run a show in Spanish? Sure, absolutely. For me, though, it would be much harder to do a show in Spanish because Spanish is not my first language.
Correct.
I learned it older. It doesn't come naturally to me. When I speak in Spanish, I'm translating in my brain. So I speak slower. It takes me a while to warm up. It's not organic for me to have an entire conversation in Spanish. It's work.
I do conversational Spanish. There's a lot of times that I say words that I'm not very familiar with, and sometimes I get looks from my mother and my sister and like, no, you didn't use that right. I'm like, dang it, I almost had it. But I do very much conversational Spanish, and I can't do very technical Spanish the way you do, Sandra, and I've seen you do it before, and you do it phenomenal. But then I've seen you try to hold on conversations in Spanish where it's just conversational Spanish, and I think you kind of...
I don't practice it enough, but that's the part that baffles me.
Yes.
I have, and this is going to date me, I understand. I have a career of 20 years of doing public relations and communications. All of that, except for 7 months, my last job, all of that is in mainstream. All of that is working in English. All of that is doing primarily work in English. The fact that I am bilingual has helped me in my career, and it has helped me because I'm able to do interviews with Spanish media. I'm able to proof translations. I'm able to translate. I'm able to write in Spanish as well. Someone I've known for several years, heard me speak Spanish recently and was completely amazed because she had no idea I spoke Spanish. So people who know me and who hear me talk, and I rarely speak Spanish, almost all of my career has been only in mainstream media. I've never worked in Spanish media. I've never done any of that. So when I get the question, is your show in English? I don't understand where the question is coming from.
It's like how we had it, and sometimes we do get it from, actually we get it all from both sides. We get it from Hispanics and non-Hispanic people. And a lot of times the conversation that we hold in our professional lives, we have English conversations. And so I'm a little baffled too to think that they think we would have it in, unless that's our tagline, unless that's something we imply.
But the show is called The Little Radio Show.
Yeah, it would kind of, it doesn't make sense to say The Little Radio Show and then have it in Spanish.
Well, that's, and I know shows, I know newspapers, and I know magazines in the U.S. that the name is either partially in English or primarily in English, and the content is in Spanish.
Well, I think in general, as a society, I think we're still a lot of people are still very much confused as to how do you communicate with Hispanics? Like, do you communicate with them in English or do you communicate with them in Spanish?
Yep.
And do you have to have Spanish in order to communicate with all Hispanics? So, I think people in general are confused about it. And I think maybe there's an association like, they're Hispanic. Maybe they're doing a Spanish show. Yeah.
Second part of the topic you said about, whether or not we gear the show to Hispanics. I don't think we do that on purpose. But if you go back and you look at the topics that we've talked about in the last, 2.5 months, you will actually you'll come out of it with a different point of view. We talk about Latino lifestyle. We talk about Latino topics because it's the thing that we're passionate about and the thing that we're comfortable with. I could talk about the Pope's visit. I could talk about the presidential election. I could talk about all this other stuff as well. That's not what I want to talk about when I'm in here in talking with the two of you. Mm-hmm. Now, do we intend, is the show supposed to be only geared toward Hispanic audience? No. I really want us to be able to say that we cater to everyone. Mm-hmm. The reality is some of the topics that we have chosen may not quite fit everybody out there. And that's my personal opinion.
I think our slice of life, like our perspective, which happens to be that we are Hispanic. And like for me, like I get this across the with my blog. I've always gotten the same question, like, because it's Juan of words, and I've always gotten the question like, do you blog in English or do you blog in Spanish? And to me, like, I do English and I do Spanglish, but there it is very much a cultural. Like, I do very much identify like with my Mexican heritage and my culture, and so I think. There I do get that question. Here, I think just the name, that's what always baffles me, is like, because the name is The Little Radio Show. To me, that's what always baffles me, is like,
what would it be called? El Radio Chiquito.
El Show Spanish. Chiquito de Radio.
There you go.
No, but my blog is Hispanic Houston, and I get pitched in Spanish all the time, and I'm like, did you even take a look at the website? There's very little Spanish on the website. I don't promote events that are not at least bilingual. I don't write in Spanish. That's on purpose. My audience is English-dominant Hispanic community in and around Houston, which is, it's an existing audience. It's absolutely correct. But I built that specifically for that. This radio show is supposed to be something a little different. Now let's go to the other side, though. There is an assumption that if you're Hispanic, you do speak Spanish, one, you speak it well enough to run a radio show, two, and that every Hispanic speaks Spanish. Some Hispanics who don't speak Spanish get a backlash from Latino community that tell them that, they are somehow not Hispanic enough because they don't speak Spanish.
Well, let's say this much. They get a backlash. You especially get a backlash if you're a community leader, if you're in the presence of people who think that you know Spanish and you need to know Spanish to be able to connect with everybody in your Hispanic community. Now, so much over to the people, the general public, who really don't know Spanish and they're proud of not knowing Spanish, and they are Hispanic, damn it, and they're okay with that. They're perfectly fine with that, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then there's the other side of those they are Hispanic heritage and they do speak the Spanish and they absolutely know it because they're Hispanic, damn it.
Obviously, my answer to people is no, the show is in English. Of course the show is in English. I don't go, oh, well, what else would it be in? But it did amaze me enough because it never occurred to me that would be a question that would be posed about the show. I have friends who are Hispanic who don't speak Spanish. I don't go, oh, well, your grandfather was was Hispanic, and your father is, born in the U.S. and raised here, and you were born in the U.S. and raised here, and why don't you speak Spanish? There are people who would say that. When I started Hispanic Houston, and I, did the website, got it up, started to promote it, I did get quite a few people tell me, why wasn't I doing content in Spanish? Like I was somehow betraying the Hispanic community by not doing content in Spanish. And I'm like, I don't understand.
It's revolutionary that you're doing this, Sandra. It's revolutionary that you have a Hispanic magazine online geared towards the English-speaking audience.
Which I don't understand why, because there are all sorts of different levels of Latinos in the U.S. Isn't some of the criticism that happens to the Latino community that they don't assimilate, they don't acculturate fast enough on the one hand, and on the other hand, we're saying, okay, well, we also need to make sure that the retroacculturation is happening as well. You can't win for losing. So here we are. We're, the three of us got together. We have this wonderful show, and my mom laughs as I say it's getting better every week. We have this wonderful show, and we are able to. We have space, and we can, in fact, if it tends to skew to the Latino topics, because that just happens to be what we've found interesting this week. Well, guess what? It's our show. It's great. And if somebody has an idea for something else to come on to the show, we're absolutely open. We're absolutely open to it. And if we want to put in the occasional palabrita de español because it just fits in.
Porque me pega la gana.
Porque me dio la gana, yeah. Guess what? It's our show. We get to do that as well. However, the show is in English.
We say all of that to let you know that the Little Radio Show is by far presented by my co-host, who we are Mexican American, but it is in English. It is. Listeners, people,
okay, friends. I am American. I'm Mexicana. I'm Mexican American. I'm Hispanic. I'm Latina. I'm Chicana. There are a lot of labels out there. I'm blessed and lucky to be bilingual. I'm bilingual because my parents made a choice on my behalf when I was younger to make sure that I was bilingual. But I didn't start speaking Spanish until I was older. And so I know a lot of people that's true for them. Their parents are Spanish speakers. They understand it. My niece and nephew understand Spanish. They are trying to become bilingual. They're not bilingual now. By bilingual I mean that you can exist in either.
I think I fall right before they do. I was forced to be bilingual. It's not by choice. It's a language that I had to speak when I had to go home in order to communicate with my mom. And in order to communicate at school, I had to speak English. Yeah. Because they didn't teach me any Spanish in school, I can't write Spanish. I would have loved, though. I would have loved to be able to write. I can read it. Of course, I was forced to. So even when they sent letters home to my mother, and they were in Spanish, she has bad eyesight. So I had to read these letters in Spanish, and I had to pronunciate and enunciate, and I had no idea what the hell I was saying, but she understood. Yeah. So it wasn't by choice, it was by force. And I'm totally okay with it, and I am blessed to be bilingual.
Well, my thing is that there's really no definition to what it is to be Latino. So whether you speak Spanish or not, that doesn't make a difference, one. And the other thing to me is, just because we talk about Hispanic topics doesn't mean that only Hispanics are going to listen. Hey. It's going to be...
I'm very interesting. Everybody is going to listen.
Because I think people are just generally interested in conversation sometimes, and sometimes you have an interest in other cultures, and you have an interest in other topics that are not within your community.
When we were at Blog Elevated, it's one of the first things, we were speakers actually, and it was one of the first things I said. Because you are bilingual, because you're bicultural, it doesn't mean the other side of the culture is going to listen to you. Sometimes it's just other cultures who are interested in your culture, and which is why our blog has been successful, because we have other people who are not integrated into our culture who are very interested in our culture, and that's kind of what has hit. And so even if you identify with being Hispanic, you're Hispanic. It's that easy. You don't have to know the language. understanding the culture sometimes is just enough.
But at the end of the day, they're universal topics that that everybody relates to, about whether it's Spanish or whether it's Chinese, or is your show in Chinese or
well, in a topic for another day, and I'll say that here, a topic for another day is whether or not I can speak to my Hispanic experience. I don't speak on behalf of every one of the millions of Hispanics in the U.S. because my experience is unique to me. And, I do represent a segment of the community. There are people out there who can absolutely identify with my Hispanic experience in the U.S., but it doesn't mean... So when I speak, I don't speak on behalf of everybody. Mm-hmm. I speak on behalf of the people I actually know.
You're not representing 50 million?
Hey, I think I might be representing the 11 or 12 people in my immediate family. Not even my extended family, my immediate family.
Now, can I just say what my answer is about how when people ask me the show in English or in Spanish, and I will say it's a general interest, general market show hosted by Latinos.
Nice.
I like that. I'm going to use that now. It's a general interest, general market show hosted by Latinos.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Little Radio Show, where we're bringing you small talk about big topics. I'm your host, Anjelica Cazares, and I want to invite you to visit our iTunes channel to leave us a rating and a review. It's a really great way to show us your support, and we really appreciate the love. Find the link on our iTunes channel at thelittleradio.com.
If you're just tuning in, this is the Little Radio Show on hmsnetradio.org. In a previous episode, we were lucky enough to have Crafty Chica on as a guest who talked about all the great projects that she works on. And I'm very, very honest that I don't do crafts. I like to see other people do crafts. I love to see people do, they take a ribbon, a glue gun, and a piece of paper and turn it into something people would pay hundreds of dollars for. I don't do that. Anjelica, on the other hand, is amazing at it.
Thank you.
If you follow her Instagram account, there are a couple of things that you're going to notice. One is that she can take makeup and turn herself into almost any character she wants. We'll talk about that another day. That she is a wonderful, wonderful and expert thrifter, and she's even been on TV about how she can take thrift store finds to turn them into Halloween costumes and other stuff.
Yes.
But her craft projects, if you've ever had an opportunity to see, from the stages where she takes something, she completely redoes it and turns it into either something that's a piece of art, something that's functional and pretty, or just something that has a wow factor. It's very, very nice.
Awesome.
I don't do any of that stuff. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about about craftythrifter.com.
Okay.
Some of the projects that you have on there and anything that you've worked on that you think
awesome.
that you're particularly proud of.
That I'm particularly proud of. All right,
let's talk about craftythrifter.com.
All right, awesome. So craftythrifter.com, it's basically the way it sounds. I am a crafter by nature, where I'm actually a visual artist by nature. It was my actual... Anyways, we'll start again. So I'm a visual artist by nature. I am a crafter by heart. So as Sandra had mentioned, I do a lot of takes on a lot of things that I like. Basically, I recreate items that recreate things that I want to recreate, and then I create originals. So Crafty Thrifter is an online-based site where you can find me doing recreations of all sorts of things. You name it, it's all under the sun. For example, I could go to a thrift store and buy a wreath and repurpose it to... I have no idea. Whatever my mind pleases to uphold, whatever it is that I want to do. So, crafting... by heart, as you mentioned, we had an interview with Crafty Chica and this lady here. She is phenomenal, but I mentioned her because
her website says that she shares the gospel of glitter with people.
Is that what it says? I've never seen that.
I had to dig into the About Us page, and it's the gospel of glitter, and I'm like, oh, that is so good. That is so her.
That is so her.
What did she say? That she believes that nothing has enough glitter or hearts on it.
No, nothing ever does. Yeah. No, but I find you can put a little bit too much glitter on things. You can turn your room or your area into a disco ball with freaking glitter. So be aware of that. But as mentioned,
why don't you talk about what one project looks like?
Okay. All right.
So
through Crafty Thrifter.
Yes.
All right. So through Crafty Thrifter, it would be me. Okay. One of the projects that I did that I think I am most pleased with, that I really didn't know the outcome of it, but I knew I needed to do something with it. So I went down to a thrift store and I picked up some folding chairs. There were older folding chairs. They were like getting rusted, and there were 4 metal folding chairs. There were 4 of them. And
so you're talking about like the aluminum type kind of ones.
Yes.
that you see the
the metal folding chairs, the ones that usually come out when there's a party going on, and you need extra seats. Well, they were the older ones, so they had the cushion on them.
Okay.
And we walked in, and I said, Mom, these are freaking cheap. I think they were like $2 each one. And I was like, and to buy them, where's like $25 each folding chair? I was like, there's no way I'm going to leave these. And my mom was like, but Anjelica, they're so ugly. I'm like, yeah, they are. I'm taking them anyway. So we hauled them home, and I kept looking at them, and I thought to myself, I want to reupholster the cushion area of it. And so what I did was I went down to a local store that specializes in Mexican items, and they had Mexican oilcloth. Bought like a yard or two, and repurposed the chair, the actual cushion of it with the oilcloth, because I knew I wanted to be durable. It needs to like fit the butts of my family, that are very many of them, and needs to hold that wear of it. And so, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should be taking pictures of this, because that's one of the things that I do. I have a bad habit that I repurpose things and I don't show anybody, and I don't take pictures. And Juan's like, Anjelica, what the hell? You're supposed to live online. All these things are supposed to be live online. And I'm like, I understand, Juan, but this is my pleasure.
Let me give you another word you need to remember. Video.
I know.
I know. Do stuff that's visual.
Yes.
You can tell, this is how I did. And you can show people. And
yes. Well, by nature, I'm a visual person. And so these chairs came out. I thought that red paint, I sanded them down, I spray painted them, I did the oilcloth around the cushion, I put it together. I think all in all, it was like a one-day thing. Mm-hmm. I took some pictures, and they blew up. They were a hit on the social sites, like Pinterest. I'm not sure, we've lost count how many they've been repinned. That is one of the most viewed pages on Juan of Words.
Wow.
That keeps getting reshared. And so this is the kind of stuff that I do. I love going to Hobby Lobby and Michael's and getting that stuff that you're going to remake and that you can recreate something, or that you have envisioned something and it's pretty and it's brand new. But that's not who Crafty Thrifter is. That's not who I am. I am that person that will find something on the side of the road, grab it, pick it up, repurpose it, and redo something with it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we do get a lot of the, is that really? No, it really is. It really is. And as I mentioned in a previous segment, that I don't do particle wood. So a lot of the things that I pick up on the side of the road are actually wood. I take it outside of my house. You leave it out there for a while. You want the bugs to like go away.
Oh Lord.
So, it is usually, when it's out there, it's usually out there for a while, and it's things that have been worn out. You can tell it's been outside of somebody's house, and they're just finally decided to get rid of it. Or like, okay, we've had it with this, and sort of put it on the side of the road. That's when I come in, I grab it, I take it, I sand it down, I do what I need to do with it, and then you repurpose it. So, I have things in my house, like in my craft room, where I have my adhesive collection.
No, okay. So, for those of you who have never seen a photo or been inside Anjelica's craft room, wow, it's like somebody took a Michael's and
or a Joann's.
Reduced it to a 10 by 10 room, to a 10 by 10 room where you think that if you breathe the wrong way, everything's going to come down on you.
No, and I rest assured, everything's attached to the walls.
I've no confirmation of that.
But I have a certain section dedicated to my adhesives, and so on that wall, what holds it's a shelf that has
There's a lot of color in that room, though.
Yes.
That's one of the things. Well, you're very fond of vivid colors.
I have to be. I'm not. I can't do plain Jane. it's not who I am. I can come across as plain Jane. When you first encounter me, I do a lot of black. I have no idea why. But when you see who I am, like outside of like the norm, out of, not the norm, in my everyday norm, when you see me outside of events and things like this, you will see I am full of color. I can't do anything but bright and vivid colors. But I digress. So, Crafty Thrifter, that's who I am. I repurpose items, I repurpose things. T-shirts, make them into bags. T-shirts, make them into headbands. You go back, plates, you make them into cupcake stands, cups. You can do all sorts of great things that can happen when you just take the time and repurpose things that you have. So that is basically who I am. And when I go to the big box, like pretty stores that I just want to buy all the ribbon and stuff, like Hobby Lobby and Michael's, I know that I'm there for just certain things. And it's very hard to hold back. And it's very hard to take on those trends that are happening where I'm a visual artist, where I've actually been, You've
been displayed?
Yes.
Exhibited?
I'm an exhibited visual artist. And so a lot of my items, actually exhibited stuff, has been repurposed items, has been upcycled, recycled items.
Oh, wow.
So
cool.
That's who I am. That's basically who I am. I invite you, again, I said this in the earlier segments, I invite you to scale back a little bit as an artist, as a crafter, as a thrifter. I ask you to scale back with me and just look at your items and see what it is that you can do. And donate. Whatever it is that you don't use, somebody else can use it. Donate.
Well, I'm going to continue just saying you're great. I'm not going to do. Sorry, I understand that people have that.
Have you ever did one of those wine sip and paints?
No.
Is that what they're called? Sip and paints, where you sit down and you all enjoy like glasses of wines and try to paint?
No, I've heard of them. The pottery classes. There's all sorts of stuff. That's great. One of the big things right now is adult coloring books.
I've seen that. Actually, I heard somebody do color by number type of little projects,
and color by number, and that's so old. My nephew didn't even know what color by number was. I took him to Texas Art Supply recently, which was a great and wonderful thing, by the way. And I introduced him to all this old stuff. The wood dolls with the tab clothes that you put on them, and the fashion plates and all sorts of stuff. Like when I was a kid.
This is your 8-year-old nephew?
Yes.
Oh my God, he must have been blown away by the possibilities.
He absolutely was. He really, really liked the idea of the molding clay that doesn't get dry so that you can use it over and over again. He really, really liked the different stamps, but he went with a budget, and he only bought one sketching pad and one sketching pen in black because he says he likes to be basic. And that was after he tried like 10 different pens until he found the perfect one. He is so related to me.
He is so related to you. The perfect pen.
Yes.
You can't find that perfect pen inside the Texas Art Supply. That is impossible. That thing.
Oh, but one of the things that Texas Art Supply had a bunch of stuff that he had never seen before, which was cool, including they have mechanical pencil lead in color.
Oh.
Yes.
Wait. Maybe I haven't visited Texas Art Supply in a while myself.
And they also have different types of lead that are for sketching and stuff. And he was telling me, but we walked through a lot of the store, and of course we're going to go back. But it was very interesting. One of those things, though, is paint by number. He had never heard of paint by number, and so I got to introduce him to that. Not that he wasn't interested in it.
Well, that's actually, as I mentioned, it was one of the things that was therapeutic for somebody who did the paint by numbers. And I think they said they actually, somebody had recommended that to them that they do, and they said it worked well. So for those of you who are want to see more of Anjelica's projects, we'll be posting links to craftythrifter.com and to some projects that you might want to check out. We also invite you to let her know if you have any projects you want her to take a look at and comment on. Ooh, that'd be awesome. I love watching other people's stuff. Please invite me. I want to Include me, damn it. Tag me in these pictures and I'll tag you. I love having conversations when it comes to thrifting and crafting. I love online, especially online conversations. I love finding things that people can find up in Boston or something that I can definitely do here in Texas. But please interact with me.
And craft on. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Little Radio Show. We invite you to check out our iTunes and our Stitcher channels and leave us a rating or a review. You can find the link to both channels at thelittleradioshow.com.